out our video. Before we get started, here's a copy of the recipe we're going to be making. Don't worry, you don't have to look at this recipe card. This is just one I've had for years and years. As you can see by the card, it's been used quite a bit. This is the sign of a good recipe. But don't worry, I've typed it out for you again, just so you can see it more clearly. And now to the video. Make sure to tune in for part 2 to see how to frost and decorate this cake. Hey, we are having our first cooking show today. So we've got a lot of requests for our carrot cake recipe.
Yes.
So for our first cooking segment, we are going to make a carrot cake for you from start to finish. So I'm Leanne.
I'm Ryan.
And this is our first mother-daughter cooking show.
Yup.
Okay.
Let's get started.
Okay, before we even get started on the cake, we're going to talk about our equipment. So, let's talk about measuring cups. You should have a good liquid measuring cup. This is how a liquid measuring cup looks. And then measuring cups for your dry ingredients. Most of the time you'll get a set that has different sizes from 1/4, 1/3, 1/2, and 1 cup. Invest in a good set and you won't go wrong with your measuring. Today we're going to use the 1 cup measure. Okay, the next is an offset spatula. Once we get into measuring flour and our other dry ingredients, I'll show you how that spatula is necessary. Next, a nice set of measuring spoons. Again, a nice set of stainless steel measuring spoons, stainless steel measuring cups will give you accurate measurements. Next, we have our flour sifter. Everyone should have a flour sifter. And for this recipe, since this is a very easy recipe, we won't be using a stand-up mixer. We'll just be using your regular, everyday hand mixer. And these are the breeder attachments that we're going to use. Lastly, a good set of pans is always necessary. Now these pans are about 6 or 7 inches. These are actually bakery pans, and you'll see once we get started, we'll line these pans before we put the cakes in the oven. All right, so now that you know our equipment, let's talk about our ingredients for this cake. What you want to do is have all of your ingredients out before you start anything on your cake. Nothing's worse than starting your cake and realizing you're an egg short. So, we have our recipe card, and yes, this is an actual recipe card. You can tell that it's been used. This is an actual recipe card. So, for this recipe, we need 2 cups of flour, 4 eggs, and one tip is always have your eggs at room temperature. So these eggs have been sitting out for a few hours on the counter. 2 teaspoons of baking soda and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1½ cups of oil, and then we have 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, a little nutmeg, and a little ginger. So the recipe only calls for cinnamon, but if you want to make a good carrot cake, you want to spice it up a little bit. Now, a lot of people put raisins and pineapples in a carrot cake. That's not necessary.
Please don't do that.
The best carrot cake is a nice, pure carrot cake. The one thing that I will allow you to add, if you'd like, are either some chopped pecans or chopped walnuts. Today we're using pecans. So these are some raw pecans that have been roasted and chopped. All right, so let's get started. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot the sugar. 2 cups of sugar. Don't make a cake with no sugar. That is not a cake. All right, let's have a little race and see who can chop these carrots the fastest. I won. All right, so now we're back. We're going to now work on blending the carrots, okay? So one thing that we do with this recipe that's different from a lot of people is we blend the carrots in the blender with our oil, because we don't want a chunky carrot cake. We don't want a lot of shredded carrot cake. We want, nice, smooth carrots. So We're just going to and we want to blend them till they're nice and smooth. So we'll do all of these.
So, where did you get this recipe?
Oh, I've been making this carrot cake for a long time. So it was actually my mother's recipe. She used to make it when we were young, but you know she has one of those cookbooks you get like from a church sale or something like that. But then you know I had to tweak it a little bit. So I think the recipe just said to chop up the carrots. But then one time I think I was being lazy and I put them in the blender, and I realized this makes it so much easier to just put them in the blender, blend it, make them nice and smooth.
Okay.
And of course it didn't have the spices because you know how we like to spice it up. So, all right, so we're gonna blend the rest of this and then we'll go on to the next step. All right, so now that we have beat our carrots in our oil, you can see the consistency is very creamy. We're not looking at any chunks of carrots. We're just looking at almost like a baby food consistency, okay? So now, Ryan, you can go ahead and put in the sugar. So, okay, so put the sugar in. And see, up until this point, we don't even need our mixer yet. And so you have your sugar, you're gonna add in your eggs and just blend them with your mixer. Then add in your flour and your salt and your spices. Make sure that's well blended and the sides of the bowl are scraped down very well. Now let's talk about the pans.
Alright, so what you're gonna do is take some parchment paper and you're gonna have to measure it to the pan. So yeah. So it fits inside like this. And then we have cooking spray.
Yeah, even though we're putting the parchment paper in, it's still good to spray around the sides. So you can go ahead and spray around the sides before we put the batter in. You don't need a lot, just a little bit, just right around the edges. Okay. And now we're going to put the batter in. One trick, if you want, when you're putting the batter in, if you have the time, what you can do, you can either weigh the pans to make sure that you get the same amount of batter in each pan, or you can use a measuring cup to make sure you get the same amount of batter. But I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm good like that. So the reason for these cake bands is to keep the cakes level while cooking. Your cake is going to cook on 350 for 30 minutes. So now we have our cake batter in our pans with our cake bands on the pans, and they are ready to go in the oven. All right, now our perfect cakes are out the oven, and we will sit them here and allow them to cool. As you see, they have all risen to the top of the pan and are completely flat.